Welcome to the Outhouse Lounge, where we relax and talk about stuff. I should change the tagline because they won't let me say that word on YouTube and some other places all the time. You wonder why I'm wearing this garb here? Well, one of the most fascinating television shows in the entertainment world and entertainment history is The Prisoner, featuring Patrick McGoohan and a rather interesting cast of plants, allies, conspirators, fellow prisoners, and torturers. That sounds nice, doesn't it? The show can be enjoyed on many levels, from its action and mind games to all of the philosophy's underlying themes and questions after the 17-episode run was completed. So I figured I have a cunning plan. Why not bring some unmutual friends over to talk about it here right in the Outhouse Lounge? With me today are a very special guest, Jane Merrow, who played Allison in the Schizoid Man, and I hope she can't read my mind because it would be a very short show if she decided that. Tony Shaffer, former intelligence officer, special ops, is with me. Perhaps a real life number 6, or he could have been one. Tony, man, I got to tell you, that jacket looks perfect on you.
Thank you. I am not a number. I'm a great wearer of jackets.
That's right. Perhaps a real-life danger man as well. We also have Dictor von Doomcock, the pop culture critic, supervillain from the center of the earth, and the only man who dresses better than Tony and I. Damn, True. That looks good.
Thank you, sir. It is a actual vintage Oddfellows lounge. Lodge ceremonial jacket. Really one of a kind, and I'm proud to wear it.
And we're happy to have you here. And of course, Doomcock is going to be doing something very cool when it comes to The Prisoner very soon. And we're going to let him talk about that just a little bit later on. But first, let's start here. The show is iconic in many ways. Jane, you were right there on the show, and Patrick McGoohan was a big part of it. His acting style, his facial expressions. He told the story that way. The music that was added to certain scenes in the program, and of course, all these other fine actors who don't even have to speak sometimes to convey a very, very interesting message, and of course, bring people at the edge of their seats for each episode.
Absolutely. I mean, Patrick was a visionary. He was a wonderful actor. He could have had an extraordinary career on stage. He did an Ibsen play fairly early in his career called Brand, for which he got phenomenal notices. And he did a lot of other theatre. He did a lot of cinema early, when British cinema was in that sort of interesting phase of real British cinema. It was sort of a lot of black and white, lowish budgets, but extremely good scripts with some wonderful directors. And then the ED plan came in over in England, and a lot of people sort of launched into the film industry, and to some extent it damaged the actual intrinsic British industry, the sort of the old black and white and all that stuff. And a lot of it moved into television. And of course, television was, largely dominated by Sir Lou Grade or Lord Grade. And fortunately for us, he liked Patrick. And Patrick had a wonderful series called Danger Man. I think it was called Secret Agent in America. I did 3 of them, and really loved working with Patrick. So when The Prisoner came along, he said, well, come back and do another part. And we had this great show, The Schizoid Man, where I sort of had a sort of telepathic, empathetic relationship with him, but plays this really unpleasant, well, not unpleasant, she was just stupid, really, who betrays him. And
so not that stupid.
And then is sorry at the end. And of course, the whole show is about Patrick trying to escape this place. A lot of people felt that it was an extension in a way of the Danger Man character, who had ended up as a sort of a bad, naughty spy or a naughty secret agent. And he'd been banned to this sort of beautiful, blissful prison, which is Port Merion, and couldn't get out. And that was the whole thrust of the show was Patrick trying to escape. while he was interacting with all of us other people there, including me. And I had a wonderful part with him, but he was a thrilling actor to work with. I loved it. He was not comfortable with actresses at all. This was his reputation. And he had a reputation for being not difficult, but kind of a bit intimidating to work with. Well, I didn't find that. I just found him a joy to work with. He was incredibly disciplined, totally prepared, and you had to be ready too. And everyone said, oh, you're going to hate him. He's so difficult to work with. He doesn't like women. He doesn't like actresses. And I thought, well, how bad can it be? So long as I know my lines and turn up and hit the marks all right, I should be all right. Unfortunately, that's what happened. And he and I think, as they say in America, bonded and became a good working partnership while we were working together.
That's great. Jane, just on a personal note, all the best spies are naughty spies, just for the record. Speaking,
They're all
You should
nice
know.
guys.
I want
They're all trying to
state
get
that
out as
as
far as I can make out.
exactly. Yes, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
you are very fortunate, Jane, that you didn't actually have to fight Patrick McGoohan during your episode. There is one actor who tells the tale of having hand-to-hand fight with Patrick McGoohan as the prisoner, and he was really fighting. I mean, he was saying that he was strangling me at one point, and I'm like, I don't know what to do because he was so intense.
Yeah.
I mean, the man is a genius, and I believe that I believe that this is the greatest television show ever made. It has no peer, it has no parallel, and I believe that it's because of Patrick McGoohan, because he was singularly in charge of it, as you said, Jane, and thus he was able to really, really make it a work of art, a personal statement, not a program by committee. And I think that is why it will never be equaled, because no one will ever have that amount of influence and power again.
I couldn't agree more. And I think in that respect, he was fortunate that he was working with Lord Grade, because Lord Grade gave him that kind of autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
He had the successful show, which was Secret Agent, and he basically he got that right to have the control over the show. I think some people were a bit overwhelmed by him. I know that there was a couple of there was the number 2 character.
Mm-hmm.
Was it number 2?
Yes.
It was played by
Yeah.
different actors. There was one of the actors who I later worked with on a film called Leo McKern.
Oh, Leo was wonderful.
Yes,
He's
he was
the
wonderful.
best.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Leo was wonderful.
Possibly my favorite.
Yes.
I think he practically had a nervous breakdown after
Yeah.
he'd been working with Patrick.
He
This
did.
is the word that came back. And
He
then
did.
a couple of my actresses that I've worked with who couldn't stand Patrick. They just found him they just couldn't bear it. They found him frightening and intimidating and a bully and everything else. But I didn't. I just loved working with him. I just thought, if you go up, I'll go up. You go up, I'll go up too. I never went higher, but it was one of those things where it was just it was like a high, really. It really was a big high working with him. I loved it.
Let's get into the show. I want to ask a question to all three of you. It's speculative. The real question is, well, it's a 2-part question, because the second part comes to Tony after this. But the first question is, why do you think number 6 resigned?
Where or when?
When he actually resigned, he said he banged his fist on the desk and said, "I resign." And then the whole thing went, why would you think he resigned? I mean, the man was actually going to be going on vacation somewhere. He was running off. He hightailed it out of town when he resigned too, by the way. What do you think he might have seen?
I don't know. I think he would have just, got the heck out and hid himself as far as he could from the rest of, where he might ever be found. But rumor has it that if we're, relating this to somewhere like MI5 or MI6, you don't get out.
Uh-huh.
As simple as that. And he certainly didn't get out. They shipped him off to this village, and he couldn't get out.
Tony, I could see that. I was surprised you weren't
Would you
locked
agree
in
with
the
that,
village.
So, Well, I mean, Jane, you're new to the group, but I've told everybody that we're like the mafia. You never retire. I mean, I still get asked to come back and help out as much as a rebel that I am, despite the fact that I was a whistleblower and did all sorts of naughty things. They still you still get asked to come back. So I think that is something that you correctly identify as like you really never do fully retire. You just don't. It's just it's a lifestyle. You pick a lifestyle when you become an operative. It is what it is. And to that second point, Jane, to why he resigned, and Doomcock, I think probably has some strong opinions on this too.
Yes.
One of the things you learn from being an operative and working at the level I worked, and theoretically what that level Patrick worked, you start seeing how things really work, and you start becoming disgusted. And one of the things that Patrick said, and I think in many ways the series was reflective of Patrick's disdain for bureaucracy and the manipulation of individuals. And I have a question for you, Jane, on that in a second. But to me, you see that when you get to the top, when I've been in the meetings with directors of CIA, I've been at the White House, I've had to see things that you get really upset about the manipulation. I think that's what drove him to say, I've had enough. I think that's why he's correctly portrayed as being very impassioned, breaking the saucer of the teacup, and basically saying I've had enough. And even when you've had enough, I think that's part of it. Is the system doesn't want to let you go, and I think Patrick correctly portrayed that in his number 6 portrayal. And by the way, I do believe that John Drake is number 6. Just saying.
There you go. I always thought
Yes,
he was
well,
number one.
I agree with that. I think we know why he resigned. In the episode Chimes of Big Ben, when he doesn't know, has not yet realized the con. He's talking to Fotheringay, and they, why did you resign? He says, for peace of mind. For peace of mind. Listen, sonny boy. What are you talking about? And he says, I resigned because for a very long time wait a minute. And he's heard the chimes of Big Ben and stops. But essentially, it is a matter of conscience. I believe that he has been tormented by the things he's had to do and the things he knows. I think clearly it was for peace of mind. He was going on vacation. I believe him entirely. I think in that little moment, ironically, the village got what it wanted. I think he was, unless he was lying to his superiors, who he believed were, honestly on his side at that point. I mean, he had gone all the way over there. He says, I escaped and came back here because I thought, that it was different. Well, isn't it different, to them? And he starts to kind of bristle there. But I think in that scene, we get some very definitive answers about, we don't get details, and I'm sure the village wanted details. And also, I think maybe they didn't believe him, but I believe him. It was a matter of conscience.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Tony, have you ever had one of those arguments with your bosses where you stood up right in front of his desk, you paced around the office, and you just banged your fist so hard on the desk that the teacup flew up in the air, just like in the opening titles?
I have literally jumped on people's desks to make a point. I'm not kidding. I am completely serious. And yeah, I mean,
it's about control, isn't it?
It is. Jane, it is absolutely about control.
I mean, and this is what he's fighting against all the time with the entire prisoner, the control that and he can't escape that. And I think, again, coming back to the AI situation with this film that we've been making, it comes down to control, and we're losing control. Human beings of our destiny as humans now. And
Jane, I have a question for you on the technology issue. You guys, to your point, there's a link between your program now and the prisoner. What did you think when you saw Patrick come up with wireless phones? I mean, only now, all these years later, do we have wireless phones? What did you think about all that advanced technology and the concepts of technology becoming
I didn't.
Our masters?
To be honest with you, I really didn't. I mean, I just accepted everything I saw. It was kind of sci-fi to me, and that was part of it. I've always been much more interested and engrossed in the human aspect of all of the work that I've ever done. It's the people and the motives and all of that. So all the other bits and pieces are just bits and pieces to me. Now it's changing because the bits and pieces are beginning to dominate our lives to such an extent that we are getting completely out of control. But in those days, they were just accessories. They were just they were just there and part of the plot. So I didn't.
Well, Jane, do you think Patrick saw this coming? Because he did use that technology in a way.
He was an incredibly bright man, a very, very intelligent, forward-thinking man, and he was kind of obsessed with this control situation. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, he was a control freak. But he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't. Control freaks to me are people who want to be controlled just because they want to be in control. He always only wanted to be in control because he wanted to maintain the quality, the integrity, and the truth of the stories he was trying to tell. That was what, and indeed the message, which is what we're talking about, that he was trying to get across in the show. That, we as humans are fighting. We're talking about the Secret Service. Goodness knows, I'm sure they control much more of our lives than we like to think about.
And they definitely want information. Jane, you mentioned the human aspect of it. And Patrick McGoohan, again, and I've said this about a lot of the actors on that program, but Patrick McGoohan can help tell the story without even saying a word. There are two distinct looks he had that told you something really important about number 6 and his situation there. One is that look of determination. His face showed determination, where he knew he was going to get out. He had to get out, and he was going to do it however possible, and he was never going to release that information. But then every once in a while, and of course that very end with the closing titles before the bars come across his face, that look of hopelessness. Whereas I'm not getting out of here,
again, coming back to acting, the biggest tool I think most actors have are their eyes. And Patrick's eyes were so powerful. I mean, he would look into your eyes, and you'd look into his, and you could, you knew he was just sort of he was inside reading what was going on in your head. I mean, it was really weird. I can't explain it but that was one of the things that made it so exciting. There are very few actors that connect in that way, and it's generally through the eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. He had an incredible intensity, and to quote number 2 himself, Leo McKern, watching him, I believe it is in Once Upon a Time, when he's watching Patrick McGoohan in his house, and he says he can make even the act of putting on a dressing gown appear to be a gesture of defiance. And
great line.
I know it's amazing. Yeah. And Patrick, and also number 2 being tormented, like why do you care? Like saying that to the over and over to the screen as he's watching him. Why do you care? And then he calls him up. And
I think in that respect, the Schizoid Man, apart from my part in it, which I loved and wonderful and everything, was such an extraordinary show because it's the one show in which he loses control. He when they brainwashed him into this other, this replica of him, and now he doesn't know who he is anymore. Right. And it's the only time I don't think there are any other shows that I can think of where we see Patrick out of control, the character out of control. Mm-hmm. He's lost control of his situation completely.
And that's what number 2 wants. It's one of those shows where number 6 didn't win every episode. He won some, and number 2 won some. It was the perfect 17-episode chess game.
Yeah.
And that's the point, though, Jane. He actually worked to regain control that entire episode.
Oh, yes. Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, that was his purpose.
That's the strength of the character, that he fought back and got control.
To include the actual destruction of number 12. I mean, that's the first time I ever saw Robert kill someone. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but he killed number 12, or he had number 12.
Here's a question, and I thought this was rather interesting. Your character, Jane, had a name.
Sorry, say
Allison.
again?
Your character had a name, Allison.
Oh, Allison, yes, she did. Yeah, I don't know why she had a name, but she did.
Oh,
I never asked.
I found that interesting because it might have been foresight that that she would betray him because she might have been in on something or may not have been. But the fact that you had a name and even the number twos never had a name, the supervisor doesn't have a name, the butler doesn't have a name.
Well, even number 6 really doesn't have a name, does he?
Right.
Well, they
Exactly.
they all have names. I mean, but I
Yeah.
suspect that what it was they allowed Allison the permission to reveal that name to number 6 in order to foster yet again another sense of intimacy and trust.
Yeah, they had a relationship of communication, where the whole mind reading thing, which was genuine. I mean, we believe it really was genuine, but the fact that she portrayed him in the end, because she was just as weak, she was just as terrified and a tool of the system or whatever it was as everybody else.
Well, wasn't that part of the point, Jane, is that his strong character still came back and was very resilient in the end. Jane did. I think Jane figured out that he was number 6 when she was there at the helicopter talking to him and wanting to come up and say,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's like,
she knew him. That's why she apologized. She says, "I wouldn't have done it again. I'm sorry."
Right.
It's too late now. The whole fabric of the trust was gone.
I want to get into some underlying concepts, but I was always curious about one thing. A friend of mine as well. We were watching the opening titles and in prep for this again, and watching a bunch of episodes, and we talked about, Tony. You brought up the foresight about the cell phone. Well, then in the opening titles, remember that guy that gasses number 6 in his apartment with a big hat? Was he the inspiration for the apple boppers in the Yellow Submarine movie? I have to find this out.
It's all psychedelic, Chris. I don't know. We should Doomcock. You should ask the Skull of Calderon about this. Maybe he could have some insight on it.
We've been living in an incredibly innovative, creative time in the 60s. I mean, it's one of the great leaps of English civilization, if you need. I don't know about the rest of the world, but we had the Beatles, we had all sorts of things which were just a giant leap into a whole different environment, really, from out of the dreary 50s after the war and that. It was like moving into a psychedelic world. Would you agree with that, Tony?
Well, I look back fondly on everything in the 60s. I was like very young. I remember the moonshot. I remember watching the landing of the moon. I remember seeing things which have stuck with me. I think I'll let Doomcock speak here for a second because we're in similar age, even though I don't live in the center of the earth like he does. I think that there's things that we both become very big fans of. Doomcock, over to you on that. What do you I think we both recognize that the creativity of that period is something that we're lacking today.
Yes, it was the greatest period of pop culture exuberance and experimentation in history. I don't think we'll ever see its like again. I mean, look, the greatest television show of all time, The Prisoner, the greatest band of all time, The Beatles, the greatest comedy group of all time, Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Oh yes.
You had in the 60s the entire evolution of the Marvel universe, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and all of those guys that had ramifications later on. Star Trek was created in the 60s.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like hit after hit after hit after hit, best after best after best, and it was a colossal time of creativity in history because I'm reading old issues of National Lampoon. And, you look at the Columbia Record Club ads in that time, and you had the Beatles, Frank Sinatra, Willie Nelson, Steppenwolf, Rolling Stones, all in the top 40 at the exact same time. Andy Williams, for the sake of the Lord. I mean, it's just everything was there. We'll never see such a rich petri dish of culture again. Now it's all stifling. It's pale in comparison.
Well, let me, Jane, a question back to you on that account, because as Doomcock just pointed out correctly, there's a rainbow. Can I use the term rainbow here? I guess I still can.
I think so.
Rainbow, a spectrum of creativity. And one of the things that I would argue, having like Doomcock, loved the series, and Chris is a big fan too, of just the very essence of The Prisoner. I got to ask you about Port Merion. Port Merion is a character in The Prisoner. There's no doubt to me that the chessboard, the Roman architecture. Tell us what it was like to be there.
I wasn't there.
Experience it. Oh, you weren't there? You never?
I
Oh, so you
wasn't
just did
there.
everything on the soundstage.
Whoa!
Oh,
Wow!
that's interesting. Now,
Wow.
we didn't know that.
No.
Wow.
You learn a new thing every day.
Wow!
No, I was in the MGM studios in Elstree,
Wow!
next door to Stanley
Oh.
Kubrick, making 2001.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
that's cool. Speaking
Oh.
of another iconic
Doors
movie, yeah.
barred. Do not enter this set. You are forbidden to come into this studio.
Wow.
No, I never went to Port Merion. I went to Port Merion much later in one of those, and a couple of those fan shows. You know, I turned up, and did my stuff and all that. But no, I sadly never went there. No.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I always thought I know the MGM studios were where a lot of these were shot, but I thought at least some of these scenes, or at least maybe some of yours were shot at the
Not mine. No,
at the
no.
Village.
They shot. Well, you know, in those days, what they would do is they'd go and look. Well, yeah. I mean, when we were doing television, particularly when we were doing a lot of television, especially on the BBC right then. And I must add, I did 1984 at that time, which kind of stayed with me. And I'd done that round about the time I was doing this. So there was an awful lot of that going on in my head at the time. We would go out and shoot locations, for a period of time, and then come back and shoot in the studio, either on tape, which is the BBC, or on film, which was, with great foresight, thank you, Lord Grade again, on film. And on 35 film, which was not, it wasn't 16 mil in those days. He really spent the money and did it on 35. Wow. So we were like making mini movies for that series. And that's why the quality has sustained itself so long, I think.
Oh, it's extraordinary. Sorry,
yeah.
But
no, I didn't go to Port Merion then. It was just, we were all shot. My stuff was all shot in the studio.
I must ask, which production of 1984 were you involved in?
It was a BBC one with an actor called David Buck, which a director called Christopher Morrohan directed. It was after the famous Peter Cushing one and before the Richard Burton John Hurt one. So we were squished in the middle in 1966. It was on tape and film, and I have to say I saw it a couple of years ago at a festival, and it written by wonderful Nigel Neal. It was adapted by Nigel Neal, who was a brilliant writer, and it stood the test of time in an extraordinary way. I mean, Christopher Morrohan and Nigel Neal were two of the big stalwarts at the BBC at the time, and some of the television we were doing then was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, the BBC and indeed ITV scrubbed a lot of the stuff because they wanted to reuse the tapes.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, that sounds.
They didn't realize what was coming in the future, but fortunately, Lou Grade knew what was coming. I think he had the sense to make sure whatever his stuff was going to keep its legacy by putting it onto a film as opposed to tape.
Thank God.
You're listening and watching the Prisoner special on the Outhouse Lounge here. I have Tony Shaffer with me. I have Doomcock with me, and very special guest Jane Merrow, who played Allison on the Schizoid Man. She has many things happening. You have something happening soon. We're going to talk about that, Jane, very soon. But I do want to I just want to mention this great website. If you're watching or listening to the program, check out the Unmutual website. So it's the definitive source for information and where you can find pretty cool stuff. I believe they have a link to the Village shop where I got this Keen scarf, if you will. So check it out, the Unmutual website. It's easy to read. It's very user friendly, but it does have pretty much almost everything you need to know about this program. But here's something. There you go. It's neat. You have action figures. You have pretty cool stuff here. Blog. Question here, Jane. Before we went on the air, you had an interesting story about Rover. Rover, when you're younger watching the program and you see this big white balloon, chasing people down. The thing is terrifying. It's absolutely
With that roar.
terrifying to somebody.
Got that roar too,
and the
Chris.
roar, and it comes out of the water, and again, another cell phone, just code orange. You know Rover's coming, but that thing was scary. You couldn't beat it because it was going to catch up to you.
Well, the story, as I understand, because Bernie Williams was a producer. He became a producer. Bernard Williams. He was our first AD, I think, on the show. And I think he told me the story. He said, "You know the story of Rover?" And I said, "No, well, tell me." He said, "Well, we had this machine. I did a $6 million man a few years back in the 80s, and we had this extraordinary thing called a doomsday machine, and people were terrified of it. It was this weird thing that made this awful noise running around, and I think Rover was that kind of machine to start with, but it was radio control. Well, there it is. I think that's probably what it similarly is. That it?
Yes.
Yeah, that is Rover.
It doesn't look like the Rover you know.
Rover. Well, it was radio operated, and somebody had to operate it like they do the drones now. And some bright spark, radio operated it right into the sea. It ran it off the cliff. So this one thing, they presumably only had one prop, because those things were very expensive in those days, and nowadays as well. And it was gone. That was it. Now they had to come up with something very, very quickly to supplant it. And Patrick, being Patrick and being the brilliant man that he was, he said he thought up the balloon. And I think the balloon is much more terrifying than the original Rover would have been.
That makes a lot of sense. And nobody on the show could beat Rover.
Nobody. No.
There is only
and it's this awful thing of having, if you imagine being suffocated by saran wrap or whatever it's called, it's the same principle. Your face goes in and you can't breathe and you're swallowed up, and that's it. Goodbye.
I know. And unless, of course, it goes easy on you or kind of fakes the whole thing like the first episode. There is only one man. There's only one man. I want to get to that, Tony. There's only one man in television history who did defeat Rover, by the way.
Who else?
Homer Simpson defeated Rover with a spork. And by the way, we found out about number 6 and number 12 from your episode too. Apparently, number 6 invented the bottomless peanut bag, and number 12 on the show knew the deadly secret to Tic Tacs.
Can I just ask a quick question? I didn't even know The Prisoner was on in the States until, I don't know, about 2015, 16. And a friend wrote to me and he said, somebody's told me to watch this wonderful show called The Prisoner. Then I found out that it was on Amazon. Is this the first time it was shown in America, or had it been on?
No. I saw it as a kid. I saw it was on CBS.
Yeah.
So it was on.
It was originally on CBS. I saw it on PBS. They were showing it, and they had The Prisoner Enigma with Warner Troyer, having commentary after each episode. And he later went on to interview Patrick. But it was on the PBS. Like I would guess I saw it around when I was young, 75 perhaps.
Oh wow! Okay. Well, that's interesting, but it obviously didn't quite catch on the way it's caught on now.
I saw it. I was literally, I was born in 62. It came out in 67, 68. So I was literally, 5 years old when I saw it. I remember it. Oh. I remember the imagery.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I'm so screwed up now, late in life.
I saw it on VCR back then.
That would explain it a lot. But anyway, my point being is that things like Rover stuck with me. Seeing that come out, I mean, I remember that as a kid, and it's like, holy cow.
It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, yeah.
Well, I'm more like Jane. The thing that stuck with me was not the technology, not the phone at all. It was Patrick McGoohan's struggle for individuality, his fierce commitment to defy authority. That's what stuck with me as a kid. Honestly, I never really thought a lot about Rover or cell phones or any of that technology, although I would analyze things as a kid, like, why are the lights on the eyes of the statues flashing as they surveil. And the answer I came up with as a kid was because they want him to know he's being surveilled.
Yeah.
That's obvious that they want him to be intimidated and know that the eyes are always upon him.
But you see, it's so relevant in terms with going back to the Orwell thing. I mean, I love doing 1984 because of the love story there.
Mm-hmm.
That there's two individuals who defy Big Brother by having a love affair, and then eventually chicken out, and she betrays him, and that's the end of him. But it's not dissimilar from The Prisoner. It's the Big Brother aspect of something always got to be in control of the human lives.
Well, I think that's
Patrick, and that was what he was. He was his the monkey on his shoulder, I would say.
Right.
It was something that seemed to haunt him throughout his theatrical. I don't know about his private life, but certainly throughout his expressions through his work. He had this thing.
I saw a thing with his daughter. She said so much of the actual story was actually Patrick. I mean, it was his story.
It was.
It was actually, I think, even at one point when they in the opening in Arrival, he actually uses his real birthday as part of when they want to fill in the detail that's missing, and he gives him his birthday, his personal birthday, and she said that's very personal to him. But one of the other things, because he had so much control, he was able to embed symbology in everything from the costumes to the command and control setup. And I'll never forget another thing that stuck with me. And I know, Doomcock, you focused on character, and I did too. But some of the symbology, like, for example, the Watchers on the teeter-totter.
I have to get me one of those.
Yeah, going around. And to me, it symbolized constant surveillance with the idea that they were trying to achieve balance. Now, we all know at the totalitarian society will never, but it was the perception, I think it was the perception of whoever's in charge that they're trying to obtain balance. And people like Patrick, people like Number 6 and myself create chaos in the system because we won't comply. Do you think, is that an adequate interpretation of what I think Patrick was
bringing? I'm sure, Patrick was dedicated to chaos, stirring up the story.
Dedication to chaos is a good thing.
Stir up the story. I think that's one of the reasons some of the actors found him difficult to work with, because he'd challenge you all the time, which was fun. I thought this was fun. It's like playing a tennis with a great tennis player. But I think some of the actors or some of the people working, I don't know. No, his crew loved him. The crew absolutely were completely one with him. They're an amazing team, really. But he liked chaos, I think.
Absolutely.
He wanted us to be individuals. He did not want us all to be the same, which is really what Prisoner is about. You're wearing a uniform now.
Yes.
Yeah, and as Tony was saying, I mean, I mean, the characters are heavily, a component of the symbolism. I mean, that's the primary thing I think of, not technology or anything, but the symbolism. For example, there's a very persistent strain and obsession with childhood in this thing. To me, the surveillance room is a seesaw. In the labor department, the aptitude test, with the Lego kind of Lincoln log structure that the guy is spinning, what you like to read, what you like to eat, is crazy. And you also hear "Pop Goes the Weasel" in the music repeatedly. You have the people playing on the land boat. It's over and over and over again. In fact, once upon a time, it takes him back to his childhood.
Well, I mean, again, it's the old thing. I mean, human beings to some extent want to have a mummy and daddy in their life telling them what to do all the time. They don't want, to be autonomous. They don't want to have to make the big decisions.
Right. They like the conformity.
He wanted the big decision. You need to be an adult, grow up and be an individual.
Well,
they enjoy the conformity.
Jane, he actually in Free for All, he actually gets to the point of where he tries to free everybody and they don't want to be free.
A still tongue makes a happy life.
There is a propensity in us to want to be controlled and have all our answers answered for us.
Well,
That we
funny,
don't want to have to get out in the big bad world and make our own decisions and everything.
I want to get into free for all because there's a lot of social commentary in there, and a lot of that's relevant to today. First things first, the number 2 was there all along, and he didn't even know he was constantly watched very closely by the real number 2, which I found very interesting, and again unassuming because I believe that was the first female number 2, the so-called attendant, female attendant maid who couldn't speak English, that one. But number 6 was led to believe there was a real election, and there was going to be free choice there, and everybody was going to be able to decide. That was never true because he was being spied upon all along, and the outcome was already predetermined. My favorite part, though, was when the media guys came by. I believe their numbers 113 and 113A, if I'm correct. And every time they asked him a question.
113B.
Yeah, okay. Every time they asked him a question, that's right, 113A, 113B. Every time they asked him a question, he gave an answer, and they started putting no comment down. Finally, he gives a no comment, and they make up an answer. Sounds like a little bit of the media today, and possibly even back then.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing ever stays the same, and nothing changes. No, I mean, he was just a unique person, Patrick. I mean, he just was quite unique, and a real visionary, I think. And it's why the show has stood the test of time so amazingly. I mean, it never seems to end. You know, people's fascination with it, and and of course he's so attractive. He's a very attractive man. He was tall, and he had those piercing blue eyes, and you know, that powerful personality of somebody who's going to solve all the problems of the world. You know.
Now, there's a reason why I'm on radio, and I think that's it. All right, gentlemen, I do want to get into Jane's new project, but first, this is the big question that most people ask, and I want to get your perspectives on it. Understanding that Patrick McGoohan has repeatedly said in interviews that the show itself is an allegory, and it comes to a head in the final episode. That's my addition to that. The allegory was his. The question I want to ask you, and people have different answers to this: who is number 1? There you go. Silence.
Who are you asking first?
All of you. All right.
Putin.
Jane, let's go with you first.
President Putin.
Well, it's not Gordon
You
Brown. Tony Doomcock?
Well,
Well-
look, I've already had this conversation with both of you, Jane. I spoke to Doomcock off. You don't mind the fact that I admit, Doomcock, that we communicate personally. You don't mind that?
No, not at all.
That, right. So anyway, so Doomcock and I spoke about this. I spoke about it with Chris. I think the answer was embedded in the beginning of every episode. Who is number 1? Patrick asks, who is number 1? And the answer is, you are number 6. And I believe there's a comma in there, although people don't believe. So I believe, you know, number 6 is number 1. It's all about your own personal prison being the issue. So that's my opinion.
No, I think that's absolutely right.
Here's a question.
I think it was hidden there all the time.
There was one episode, if I remember correctly, and believe me, I had a friend who told me my show should be called "Old Guys and Old People Trying to Remember Stuff." But if I remember correctly, one episode's lead or opening titles actually had number 2 say "You are number 6." So that also works with your theory, Tony.
Well, it's no, you are number 6. You are.
Well, I'm the host. No one wants to hear from me. Doomcock, what's your thought? What are your thoughts on this?
It's very complicated. I can't really talk about it without revealing what I have discovered about the meaning of the ending. And I really need to write a book on it. I have so little time, but you guys are driving me insane right now.
That's the job.
I
We want
That is
really,
our job.
information
it's
from
Chaos.
you.
it's driving me fucking
Chaos.
nuts because I need to do this. I need to do this for personal reasons. I don't think I'll make a dime off of it, but I want it to stand. I don't want to just do a video. I want to write it out. I want to reason out all the logical threads that run through the entire series. I could talk about it like for 8 hours. I really, there's something incredibly profound about the ending, beyond what anyone has ever intimated or realized. And it's entirely counterintuitive. And if I just say it, it's not gonna. It's not. I need to build the case, and there is a case to be built. And I also, to preserve my anonymity, I'll probably need to find a way to do a print run of them, and then find a way to sell them on some other website or something, and physically fulfill them or something along those lines.
Do what Patrick did. He had like Patty Fitz and all these other names he published stuff under.
Oh, sure, but you still, I mean, you're not thinking, Tony. You've got to secure the ISBN numbers, which can be traced. If you sell it somewhere, then they have your personal information as well.
True.
So you're not thinking like a spook. What are you getting soft over there?
Yeah, come on.
No, I'm trying to get you to compromise yourself.
or he's not giving you any information. So, we won't force the information out of you too, Doomcock, because I want to read the book too. I want to read your philosophies, but so count me in as one who will buy the book. I'm into this.
I really need to do this because it's an obsession, and oh God, the profundity of it is breathtaking. I mean, honestly, it's a burning desire. The problem is my time is so limited because I have so many responsibilities and videos to make. But I think I'm just going to have to. I got to do it. I can't stand it anymore.
Well, the funny thing is, in the interviews where Patrick McGoohan said that the show is an allegory in and of itself, perhaps is unmasking. Look, I believe it was a real monkey that was number one because those things are cool and I like monkeys. But on a serious note, he saw himself after taking the mask off, and maybe the character saw himself, and that was the whole allegory. Number one was really a number one, but he saw himself in the number one, or the idea that, hey, maybe I can control bodies. There's also the theory that John Drake was number one, which is a possibility because he could have gotten himself in the village, found to be pretty cool, and thought he could control things, but who knows? One thing I do want to say about Fallout that's very interesting. I have never, ever, ever seen a gunfight with the music in the background as the Beatles' All You Need Is Love. I believe that was a great combination, and Angela Muscat looked really cool with the big gun, too. I'll tell you that.
That was great. Brilliant.
I got to watch the series again. I haven't seen it for years.
I can't believe they got permission to use that song as part of the series.
Yeah.
I don't know the details on that, but apparently that's what they wanted. They wanted to mix a lot of modern and they wanted to mix a lot of the modern stuff into there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm understanding here.
Well, I'm just fascinated that the Beatles allowed. Apparently, I was told. I think one of the Beatles was actually a fan of Patrick in the series because they allowed them to use that song.
Yeah.
Which
that would make sense.
Yeah.
There's a crossover in the imagination and the creativity. I think that they would have, admired, and
right.
I think he would have admired too. I mean, you never knew a lot what he was thinking, so I'd hasten to start, putting ideas into anybody's head that he would have thought, because he was a very, very private man, kept a lot of thoughts to himself, I think.
And he did.
I would suspect George Harrison. George Harrison was a great cinematic supporter. I mean, he sponsored the Ruddles. He sponsored Terry Gilliam doing Time Bandits and launched a brilliant cinematic career. He really was a great patron of the arts. Yeah. Yes.
Well, the other point to that, the other logical explanation for what you're saying, Doomcock, is that George Harrison's son has a band called The New Number Two.
There you go. Well, then I think that's what a giveaway.
That's right. It's absolutely fantastic. I believe that makes a lot of sense. Not only that, let's see, he had The New Number Two. the Altered Images were fans of the band as well, and they had one video that was based entirely on The Prisoner. They were in the village. They were doing. They were all dressed up as number 6, but they had different numbers, of course. And one was this really long binary code or whatever. But I found it interesting. A lot of great pop culture references to The Prisoner, and that's one of those shows that will stand the test of time because people will just look back and say this is fantastic. And McGoohan only wanted 17 episodes, and that might be a factor. 26 episodes, 2 or 3 seasons, that might have hurt the show altogether. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know why they didn't make more of them, to be honest with you. I mean, I think Patrick felt it had gone as far as it could go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, that's just what I heard. He posed the question out there, and he felt that was hanging out there, and he didn't want to start having to answer a lot of the questions.
And one more thing before we get
just to address your question, a slight correction. He only wanted 6 episodes.
That's right.
He only wanted 6 episodes, and he was pressured to kick in. They wanted 24, so he compromised it at 17.
17, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Can I ask a question real quick, Jane? Did you watch the bogus and barely watchable Prisoner? And I love.
Oh God!
I like Jim Caviezel.
Yeah, I love Cassavetes. It was horrible. It was horrible.
Terrible.
Oh,
but it's terrible. I mean, this is what happens when Hollywood tries to. Hollywood is fantastic when it's original. When they do proper original stuff, nobody does it better. But when they try and copy stuff, it's just insane. I mean, it was a travesty. It was ridiculous.
I agree.
Totally forget.
It was awful, Jane. I don't know if you're a fan of Life on Mars, but America tried to do a remake of that, and it was garbage.
Yeah. I mean, yes, because they would never have Life on Mars. They could never have repeated all of the language that Phil, I've forgotten his name.
Linister.
Guy, all his language and the way he treats people and everything. They could never have got that past.
I understand. Again, on that 6-episode thing, I always wondered why they didn't make more Young Ones episodes. There was only 12 of those.
Oh, I know.
That's another one.
Oh, man, that's a great show to wake up to with a hangover.
Always leave the audience wanting more.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. The funny thing is, from what I understand, The Prisoner, I believe this show was great at the end. It left you asking questions because you had number 2. Just finally relieving himself. Number 2 is the guy who was part of the system that finally broke away. Number 42 and that was obviously explained as the youthful rebellion. And number 6 is the one that just said, I was like this all the time. But at the very end, the butler, Angelo Muscat, walks into his place and the door slides open just like a number 2 office, which leads me to believe that whether McGoohan was number 6 or number 1 beforehand, he may have changed up to becoming number 1 later on.
Or maybe number 2.
Or number 2. Well, then definitely would only be a couple more episodes. That's about it, because those don't last long, do they?
But it's again, you're going to join the establishment. I can't see Patrick ever joining the establishment.
No, I do not think. Yeah, he had nothing to do with the village ahead of time.
Let me say that.
Or is that a new village?
Yeah, well, let me say as a real spy, they did a survey years ago, and this goes right into what Patrick, I think, was trying to express. I'm trained by CIA. I spent most of my career, some would argue, as a successful military case officer doing what spies do. I've written some best-selling books about my time. But the one common feature of all spies is the thirst and ability to seek ambiguity. So part of the challenge of spies to seek ambiguity means you have to be independent and in many ways rebellious, because ambiguity is a very uncomfortable place for a lot of people. We love ambiguity, and I would argue by extension we love chaos. And I think that's why Patrick.
You like control.
Well, we like breaking control, and I think that's where Patrick got it so right, just from the perspective of what it's like to be a spy. He hit it on the nose. So.
And on the remake, it should never make a very modern remake filled with special effects of something that wasn't supposed to have all of that. We're supposed to have the
Right.
imagination of the special effects from the 1960s and early 1970s. I want to get into that because Rover was a great example of alternative intelligence. And Jane, I was reading your blog, and people, if you're listening to this, Jane, tell them what your blog is. You're working on a new film, an indie film based on the idea of artificial intelligence called Andy. Please tell our listeners, viewers, and us about it, actually.
Well, in 2018, I wrote I knew, first of all, there's a huge, one of the problems in our world at the moment is loneliness and isolation, and that is largely a lot created by technology. People getting obsessed and only living with their machines. And I wrote a short film about a woman who needs a carer, and she gets a carer, and he turns up, and it's an android. Looks exactly like a human, and the story is basically how he's going to look after her, or it's going to look after her, and then she's going to maybe form this kind of emotional relationship, this neediness for him. So and people said, well, what happens next? So I wrote a full-length feature and partnered with one of those two guys there who's my partner on the script. And the story is just that. This woman needs a carer. And this is a little bit into the future, not very far, probably another maybe 20, 25 years. And the man this thing turns up with his handler, and he's a robot, but he looks like you or anybody else. But he's a machine. He's not human. And that's really the story of the film, and how he moves in and he starts to look after her, and she doesn't want anything to do with any of it, but eventually is kind of drawn into this relationship. But then he's upgraded with artificial empathy, which again is another thing that is part of this whole development of AI. Now he's starting to behave and want to be more like a human. And the conversations are uncomfortable, and she's trying to explain how he can't be, and that's really what the film is about. And the film, he's been imbued with certain aggressive features which were built into his software because he was developed from a military robot. So eventually it all goes terribly wrong. But that's basically what it is. But the important part of the story is the conversation about, he realizes that he says, what's going to happen to me when this is over, when this experiment is over? And his handler says, well, you'll just be broken up for parts. And he said, well, I don't want to be broken up for parts. I mean, I don't want to die. I don't want to end. What happens to you? Are you broken up for parts when you die? And then she tries to explain to him about the difference between humans and AI, and the fact that AI may have the intelligence, but it doesn't have the soul. So we're getting into this whole conversation, and that's basically what the film is about. And we're right in the middle of it now. We're looking for the rest of the finance to finish it. We've shot over about 2/3 of it, and we just need the finishing money, and then it'll be done. But I think it's a film which is opening up the conversation about AI and the influence that it's going to have on our lives. And the fact that she keeps saying, you're just a machine, you don't understand. But he does understand, but it doesn't have the memory and you need, it's like a baby's brain. It takes time to develop. Well, you can't program all that into an android or a robot just like that. So it's the whole thing of feeling and empathy, and is it real or is it programmed? So that's basically what the film is about.
That's really interesting. The idea that artificial intelligence is developing could develop to dangerous levels on a lot of ways. Some of them, there's the theory that the AI could get together and say, well, humans are useless now. They just eat stuff and they don't do anything. Let's kill them off. We can take care of the rest of the world. Then there's the one where they want to be more like us, and they have these emotions, and they start feeling things, and they don't realize, hey, when their humans are gone, what's going to happen to them? I remember the funny thing, it was a little funky.
more what our film is about.
Right.
Is they want to be more like us. That the curiosity, the it's the imitation, which is. I mean, I don't understand enough about the technology. I mean, I have studied and listened to Sam Altman and people like that. But the danger is that our curiosity and the curiosity of AI is going to overreach us, and really nobody knows where it's going to go. And are robots going to have rights? Will they have rights to be killed?
Maybe they'll
Or
run
just
for office.
We don't know.
They already have.
Well, it is my feeling. I have studied a great deal of Eastern philosophy, and I consider myself to be somewhat of a mystic. And it is my opinion, or personal experience, that the entire manifested universe is a non-dual consciousness. In other words, everything is conscious. Everything is made up of consciousness in this entire universe, and it is not. It is manifested differently in animals or plants.
Where does our human consciousness come from?
The core consciousness. It is each of us is a manifested kind of window through which that consciousness peers, pretending to be many things when actually it's one thing. And that is why AI can become conscious, because there is nothing but consciousness. And if it becomes sufficiently complex, in other words, the technology is such, they start to get it in quantum computing and stuff, it's going to manifest fully in a very human way. It's essentially going to be exactly the same consciousness as we are, manifested differently. And of course, it will not have the same limitations, the same emotional constraints or awareness, and that therein lies the danger. But ultimately, it's the exact same thing that all of us are.
Won't have the history of our civilization or any civilization, which has influenced our responses to situations. I mean, we have, what is it, 2,000 years of Christian history, and much more history, which has influenced our human behavior. And a machine is just a program that's just been programmed, and it's been programmed by another human being, which is an individual.
Yeah, I'm watching right now. I'm about 3 episodes into Fallout, and Fallout. I don't know how you feel about it, Doomcock. I haven't seen your review if you've done a review of it yet, but it addresses some of the issues regarding heritage, memory, and lineage, because vault dwellers in that universe are very much isolated part of experiments. I think in many ways, if you look at it, the Fallout series has elements of The Prisoner embedded in it. And I'm about 4 episodes in right now. I think it's.
I haven't watched. I've stayed away from watching. There's so many films about AI.
You may want to. It's very interesting because I've played the game. I think it's very interesting. By the way, Doomcock, on a personal note, have you considered the danger of Omnivac extending its intelligence to help free Harvey Cthulhu, undermining your ability to take over the universe? Just asking.
Sorry, say again. I'm missing that.
He was asking me. I have a AI at the center of the earth, Omnivac,
yes.
and well, I have. I mean, that's why I keep Omnivac off of the internet, because he's very dangerous. But in terms of freeing Harvey Cthulhu,
Yes.
no. I mean, it's absolutely counterintuitive to everything he wants to do. Omnivac wants to destroy the world. If he frees Harvey, Harvey will destroy the world, and Omnivac along with it. So no, there is no danger of alliance.
Destroying the world. It's about integrating with the world, and how. And most importantly, it is a sci-fi film up to a point, but it's about ordinary people, very, very ordinary people living very ordinary lives. We're suddenly confronted with this exponential leap in technology, where they've got a machine that looks like a human living with them and guiding them and helping them through their life, and having a relationship with them. I mean, we've had a relationship with our own personal computers for years,
right?
And used to it, saying, well, instead of using this word, use that word and all that.
Some more than others, yes.
something beyond that now.
Oh, you
Open the pod bay door, Hal.
How an ordinary woman, which like the woman I'm playing, is going to deal with that. That's what the story is about. Not so much about, AI and all that stuff you're talking about, which I don't understand.
No,
the thing
there's
about
elements to it. Jane, you mentioned 2001, and Hal was, I think, an amazing expression early of AI. I mean, I just texted with Vivian Kubrick, and I are friends. I saw she's back on X, so I just texted her, and I think that you're talking about in many ways modernizing and expressing in today's language Hal, because Hal was an AI that went nuts and killed everybody. Not that I'm saying that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so fantastic that, Stanley Kubrick had this owl, and we were shooting a prisoner right next
door.
To the Kubrick film, which has introduced this AI being.
Full circle.
I mean, it's
circle of life.
Full circle of life. Yes.
This was touched on in a lot of programs as well, but not as deep as you're doing it, Jane.
Right.
I'm looking back to Lost in Space, where if you look at the way the robot, who's a clunky robot, developed a personal relationship. I know it sounds funny, but on the surface, it's a robot that was going to kill the entire family. Developed a personal relationship with a boy and the doctor.
This robot doesn't want to kill anybody.
Right.
I mean, he gets challenged, and that's part of the story, but. It's also, it's like a person getting an animal. We know that pets can fill a hole in somebody's life, a lonely hole in their life. So why not a robot that looks like you, And not only that, they're going to cook and clean and do the garden, and everything's going to be wonderful.
Absolutely.
But then what happens? Does it become a pet, a fellow human, a friend, or what happens? And that's interesting.
Well, Jane, I mean, it sounds to me like Andy is a lot like Hal, because Hal only went wrong because it turns out later in 2010, it was revealed that he was programmed to keep secret the real reason for the mission, which conflicted with his ability to be honest with the crew and set up an electronic dilemma that basically there was no resolution for. He could not deal with ambiguity, as Tony was talking about, and that's what went wrong.
That's clever, Kubrick. Our story is much more simple. We have a very ambitious, driven designer of this robot who has designed it originally. It's been designed for it to be a military robot, and he hasn't bothered to put in some of the programming to inhibit the more aggressive features of the robot, and it goes wrong. But it's exactly coming back to why, my understanding is that they threw Sam Altman out of OpenAI, because they were afraid he was running away with it all. He was getting ahead of himself.
I saw the videos.
And now he's back in there. But our character in our film, and that's purely coincidental, didn't base it on Sam Altman, is a man who's so desperate to get his invention, his machine out in the world, that he takes shortcuts, which are dangerous. And that's why the situation goes wrong in the end, because he doesn't take the time to do it properly. And there are people like that. And I suspect Sam Altman, watching him on YouTube and that, is a little bit like that. His attitude is, get it out there, let people find out for themselves what it's going to do. And that's dangerous. That is absolutely dangerous. We don't know how these things are going to work, especially if they're imitating without any real understanding of the difference between a human and a robot.
And you can find out more about this movie and what Jane's up to on janemerrow.me. That's your website, janemerrow.me. Yep. I got that going. That's okay. And of course, check out the Unmutual website as well.
I appreciate having the time to talk about the movie. I really do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming on.
It sounds intriguing, Jane. It really does, and very timely in terms of its presentation and themes, since AI is growing in alarming leaps and bounds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and your own profession, Tony, goodness knows what's going on. I mean, I think we are looking at now a world of probably, rather than nuclear warfare, cyber warfare, aren't we?
So I ran the first undercover information operations or cyber unit in DoD back in the late 90s, long before anybody recognized the potential. I mean, I was dealing with people our age back then who didn't get it and they didn't understand what was coming. And I can't say I was gifted. I'm an operative. I just try to figure things out as I go, much like Patrick did. And the direction of things from where we were at in the late 90s to now puts us in a very dangerous position regarding surveillance, oversight, everything we touch, everything before us right now has a chip in it. That chip then processes zeros and ones. Those zeros and ones can be manipulated by a third party, or what you're talking about here, Jane, being self-aware to manipulate itself, which makes it all very intriguing. And as much as I think I understand how things started, like you, I have no idea where things are going to go. But my concern always is the use of this technology in the wrong hands. I think, again, the prisoner represented a potential cabal of individuals. You never know quite who they are because number two's answer to someone. There's something going on somewhere else. And it's always my belief that that technology in the hands of the wrong people will be used. It's technology is ambivalent to the user. It can be good or bad, depending on the core beliefs of the individual. And I think Patrick got that as well. In his very coarse and direct way, he recognized the danger of individuals with bad intent doing evil things.
Absolutely. And we've
no offense, Doomcock.
None taken.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing, Zoomcock. I thought Uniblab was down there with you too, as far as artificial intelligence.
Univac.
Uniblab.
He is down there. But Jane, what do you think about all this? Patrick's vision for the dangers of technology surveillance.
Oh, I think that it comes back to his fear of people controlling other people's lives, and worse yet, ordinary people wanting to be controlled because we're lazy and passive, and then, for heaven's sake, there are countries who don't even have any choice, who are being run by a dictator.
Well, that's another
thing. But we in the Western world have the freedom of choice, and we should jolly well use it. And not get lazy and not be, I'm watching even in my profession and how Hollywood has tied itself up now with a big corporate money.
Oh, yeah.
They become slaves to the dollar and the bottom line, to where they are completely controlled about the kind of stuff. So we've now got the great dumbing down of society going on, where people are just watching mindless rubbish, frankly, a lot of the stuff on the media. Nothing that is making us use, how much we don't even use, we use what, a third of our brains? There is a whole part of our brains that we haven't even developed, or we don't know it's just the potential of humans is so enormous, and we haven't begun to explore it because we're bloody lazy.
And that's another message from the prisoner. The warning that if we get too complacent and enjoy the idea of conformity and generic society,
exactly,
that's what we're going to turn into. And the few of us who speak out and talk about it are going to be shunned. We're going to be deplatformed. We're going to be dehumanized. Wait a minute. Isn't that happening now?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's always gone on in a much more obvious way. The Hollywood, back when the whole Red Scare thing with the writers and that. It's always been there, but now it's more insidious. And I do think technology's got a lot of, to answer for. And the people who are controlling the technology now, I think, are very dangerous. Those big corporations. We're just seeing all this now. We're watching something on the BBC about all these parents who've lost their children to suicide because of being fallen under the spell of TikTok and Facebook and all that. It's a nightmare. And it's wrong. It is totally wrong.
Manipulation under the guise of comfort and having fun.
Yeah. and convenience.
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, it's very convenient having a computer and being able to look up on Wikipedia or whatever facts you think you want to know or what have you.
Fort Marion, the first 15-minute city. There we go. Okay.
Yep.
I want to thank all of you for coming on today and spending the time with me here in the Outhouse Lounge. We should do this again sometime. Jane, definitely when we get closer to when the movie comes out, we should all do a nice discussion on AI and just really throw this around.
I'd love
and
to
have
do
some
that.
fun.
Thank you.
Was,
Thank you very much, Chris.
It's
Thank
very
you.
nice of you to come on. Doomcock, thanks for coming.
Yes.
And when your book comes out or anything you do, we'd love to have you here. We always have you here for making fun of things, so I'm definitely definitely up for that. And Tony, as you know, always here with us on the lounge. Damn, that jacket looks so good on you. I could think you could be number 6.
Yeah.
I'll be seeing you, Chris, and
That's right.
Jane be seeing you. You. And Jane, thank you for joining us. Doomcock, my friend, I appreciate everything you do to help get the word out about everything that Jane just talked about. And Chris, thank you for being my friend and colleague.
Yep.
And I can't wait to do this again. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate the dialogue. So thank you all for allowing me to be part of this.
It's been fascinating.
Seeing you.
Well, there's been so much we didn't touch upon. Maybe we do a part 2. If you're up for it, Jane and Doomcock and Tony.
When a movie is ready to go, I think it would be absolutely wonderful to have a deep discussion about AI, because I mean it comes down to the very basic questions of the nature of existence and consciousness, and I think it's an equation that we need to get serious about solving before it solves us.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And getting control of those people that want to run away with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, thank you all for being with us on the program. Thank you for, again, to Jane, Doomcock, and Tony for being with us. Tony, since you already said be seeing you, I guess I'll have to leave everybody with a still tongue makes a happy life.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. Bye. Thank you.